Welcome to the Precast podcast, episode 46. So today we're going to be talking about, can concrete be green? That may or may not be the actual title of this episode, but Ben, I want to bring you in. Thank you very much for participating today and telling us more about how to make concrete, I'm going to say, more environmentally friendly. As we get things kicked off, Ben, can I ask you just to give an intro of who you are and maybe a little bit of your background?
Hugh, thanks for having me. My name is Ben Grimsley. I'm the technical services manager for the eastern region of North America for CarbonCure. Got my start in the concrete industry working precast pre-stress for a bridge beam, bridge pile company in the southeastern region in Savannah, Georgia area. From there, I went on to be a QA manager for an international ready mix company, eventually being promoted to a technical services manager of that company over about 108 ready mix plants. From that point, I went on to be a QA director of a tilt wall ready mix portable plant company, and kind of learned about CarbonCure along the way, and was very interested in it, and had a great opportunity to come on board, and I've very much enjoyed the last 2 years I've been here.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, all right. So again, just to make sure that listeners understand, so you're with CarbonCure. I got in touch with another person who works within your organization from a contact I have with NPCA. And I guess it's just being at previous NPCA, the Precast show or the annual conventions, kind of hearing your company's name. And again, I'll call it the green movement is something that, appears to continue to be building momentum. And I think I've went to grad school and learned about concrete and alkali silicate reaction and all sorts of different things that kind of happen inside the concrete mix. So I'm very interested to learn more about kind of how this old gray concrete mix, there appears to be a lot of exciting new things that are happening. So as we kind of get going, Ben, could you bring us through what is CarbonCure? How did the company get started? Just kind of bring us back a little bit and, just explain who the company is.
CarbonCure is a company that offers kind of a suite of software, hardware, technical support services to our producer partners. We're most widely known for designing and manufacturing a technology that takes carbon dioxide that was, would originally be a waste emitted from an industrial source, such as a fertilizer or chemical manufacturer. And then we inject that CO2 back into concrete to make the concrete, to allow us to reduce the cement in the concrete, make the concrete essentially greener. We're mineralizing what would be a waste gas, which increases cement efficiency, allowing us to make the concrete with less cement. We also have reclaimed water technologies for sequestering additional CO2, but we just recently launched our Express EPD software to kind of make a cost-effective, streamlined method for our producer partners to leverage real-time production to streamline generation of environmental product declarations.
So you guys got a lot going on there. One of the things that a lot of precast concrete manufacturers do now, and I guess it's it's kind of based on specs, and if the DOT allows it, or if the job specifically allows it or not, is they'll utilize like a slag, or a fly ash or things of that nature. Could we just quickly talk a little bit about, does anything specifically happen inside the concrete mix, inside the actual matrix of the concrete, in utilizing this technology, this process? What's actually happening in there to quote unquote make it greener?
Slag and other positives like metakaolin, calcinated clays, fly ash, they're all great products. They all allow us to reduce the carbon footprint and put recycled material back in the concrete as well. But they all have a cost associated with them. When we inject CO2 into the concrete itself, what happens is the CO2 interacts with water and is converted into carbonate, which is a CO3. It's a negatively charged ion inside the plastic concrete. During the first hydration reaction, a lot of calcium ions are released as well. And calcium and carbonate have a very strong chemical affinity for each other and very rapidly form a very strong ionic bond and bond to form calcium carbonate, which is limestone. It exists inside the matrix. It binds to the cement particles as the cement particles crystallize. And that, like I said earlier, increases the cement efficiency. Increasing cement efficiency basically means you get more PSI per pound of cement used than you would if you just used the cement alone. And so by doing that, what we're essentially are able to do is we're able to pull a certain amount of powder out of the mix designs, fill that powder up with, or fill that void up with aggregates and make the same mix by taking out the cementitious or some of the cementitious material that is your most expensive material inside of the concrete.
So, like as a result, kind of high level, by utilizing the CarbonCure technology, are you making the concrete a denser product, higher, like are you able to drive a higher PSI? It's obviously all, kind of concrete mix based, but I guess, like can using this technology, can you also eliminate the need for, supplementary cementitious materials as well?
It depends on the end use of the concrete. Obviously, supplementary cementitious materials have other properties that give the mix designs as well, which, ore packing, decreasing permeability, those kinds of things they're necessary in saltwater environments and other high exposure environments such as sulfides and sulfates.
Okay.
But what we do is we allow, we've done extensive testing with regards to durability, and what we've shown is that we don't have a negative, we have a neutral to positive impact to durability factors. So even though we're reducing the powder in it, we're not actually changing the permeability. We're not actually changing the compressive, the flexural, the tensile, the properties that are necessary for long-term durability of a concrete structure.
Got it. Okay. No, that's exciting. So the ability to decrease the amount of cement that's going into the mix, which and maybe we'll get into kind of the economics a little bit later in the conversation, but you're using less cement and you're not sacrificing any performance in any way, shape, or form by doing that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. So I guess we've kind of hit on. I guess would there be anything else that you would talk about? From a standpoint of trying to get a producer to utilize the technology, in terms of like benefits or value that CarbonCure brings. I guess kind of hearing that you can use less cement, which, as you said, is the highest cost product that goes into the recipe, be better for the environment. Are there other things that you talk about in terms of kind of selling points as you're trying to get someone to be open to the idea of utilizing the technology?
We say cost benefit is very beneficial to our customers, but our company's primary goal is the reduction of CO2 emissions into the environment. We have a very lofty goal of 500 million tons of reduction of CO2 per year. To date, we're at almost 26 million cubic yards of concrete produced with our technology, and we've saved over 207,000 tons of CO2 from going into the environment. And that's great. That is our goal. But for our producer partners, the biggest advantage is the cost advantages, the opening up of other available avenues of construction. A lot of engineers and a lot of architects are starting to specify more greener construction, starting to focus in that area, and as well as some regulatory agencies as well.
Okay, so that was one thing I was curious about. Like would a Massachusetts DOT, if I don't know, let's say Shea Concrete Products gets like a highway barrier job, and the spec is for 4,000 psi concrete, 25% slag, substitution for cement. Have you guys had any challenges, or are there any barriers for like DOTs to utilize the technology? What are you guys doing maybe at the AASHTO ASTM level, PCI, ACI? Is there anything kind of going on in the background where you're trying to get things approved, or are folks just like, oh my gosh, green concrete, let's do it? How's that process gone?
Anybody that's ever worked with DOT knows that each individual DOT is their own kind of individual, set aside agency. My funnest interaction is, North Carolina DOT looks across the border at South Carolina DOT and says, oh, we're not going to do what those guys are doing, and vice versa. Primarily, they look at, AASHTO standards or ASTM standards. We are an ASTM C494S compliant admixture. We have done extensive durability testing, and we're in the process of getting approval for through the NetPET program for approval with AASHTO. I was actually at the testing just a couple of months ago, so I think we're coming up on our 6-month report from AASHTO as well. And so far, it's looking extremely positive. Most of the East Coast states are all AASHTO based. We do have approval in several DOTs. We're currently in Iowa DOT, Chicago DOT, Hawaii DOT, Nebraska, and working with Montana for approval. And then once the AASHTO approval as an AASHTO admixture occurs, then we'll start reaching out to interested parties on the East Coast and other AASHTO states, because we have had a lot of interest. But again, if the state is AASHTO compliant, they can't really do any testing with us until we've hit that barrier. So from a regulatory standpoint, though, we've done testing with the FAA, looking at 650 flex and 700 flex. We've done testing, with the Federal Department of Transportation and several others. So we're working in that route, but it's a very slow, methodical process.
Yeah. Okay. So working through that process, and from what you said, it sounds like any and all testing that's been done thus far, everything's been positive, and kind of no red flags have gone up, which is exciting. Can we maybe jump into so in a previous life, I worked with a company that delivers equipment focused on the precast concrete industry. So, they can bring in like a full turnkey mixing and batching system, including concrete delivery, to the call station or, right to the mold based on what's being cast. How does the process work of actually integrating CarbonCure, into an existing batch plant?
It's really easy. I've worked on portable sites where, the largest portion of the technology is, typically the CO2 tank, but the CO2 tanks are typically welded to pallets and for easy transport with steel pallets. The technology itself is a retrofit technology, so there's nothing that really needs to be added to a batching system. If the customer uses a central mixer, we have methodologies to attach injection nozzles directly to the central mixers. We've worked with a lot of different mixer companies to kind of ascertain that. If the company is dry batch based, it's really just essentially putting a nozzle inside the hopper. Our technology exists from the CO2 tank forward. So it's the hosing, the valve control box, which is next or about 10 feet from the tank. Then you've got 60 to 80 feet, not worth of nonlinear discharge hoses for the gas and the solid CO2 that are going to go through the piping system. And then inside the batch house itself is a small control box that's got real-time telemetry. So our engineers back in the main office can, see when there's errors, see when there's things that pop up, and, be available for customer support. It's also a way, as you know, with PCI MNL 116, PCI MNL 116 requires us to calibrate our admixture boxes several times a year, which is not something the ready mix industry typically has to do. But because we're real-time telemetry, and because, we know the known size of our nozzle, the known size of our pressures, and the known size of our injections and the length of our injections, we're able to do plus or minus 1% with regards to control of our admixtures. And the precast industry is the only one that actually requires a controlled dosage. I believe it's plus or minus 3% per MNL 116.
So, do you guys come in totally independent? Let's say a producer is utilizing admixtures from Sika, just as an example. Would you guys work with them at all, or are you completely independent from what most people know as admixtures that go into a precast concrete?
It's a great, I maintain great relationships with, a lot of the admixture companies. Someone took a picture in Chicago last week of a bunch of us standing next to each other and talking, because, the precast industry does a really good job of interacting, communicating, staying in touch and working together, essentially collaborating without crossing lines that are unacceptable. And so when I've got questions about things, or I see odd things in mixes, and I'm at a plant that has, say, Sika or GCP or Euclid or any of the other admixture, master builders, any of the admixture companies out there, I've developed enough contacts over the year that I'll reach out directly to them and say, this is what I'm seeing. And because it's a professional relationship, I usually get a really decent response back. For our producer partners, yes, we spend a lot of time in the field. We spend a lot of time with our customers, helping them out, helping them get settled, working with mix designs. We like to refer to ourselves in the initial conversations with the customers as an extension of their QA team. We also have other internal resources that the customers don't know about until don't know that's the incorrect statement, that probably didn't realize during the sales cycle. We have strategic business managers that help come in and find great business and generate interest in the areas where our customers operate. Go out to AEC talks, essentially interact with those communities to help build them business, because our customer or producer partners are driving for greener construction. So we want to have that as an additional added value for our customers.
Okay, so I think that's important. So just to make sure I understand this, so a producer starts to utilize the CarbonCure technology. There are folks within CarbonCure that are out there actually driving leads for that producer and trying to drum up business for that producer as well. You're kind of behind the scenes.
Educate.
Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's exciting. Okay, very cool. Could I maybe kind of getting into some detail? Is there like when is the carbon like when are you guys sequenced into the mix?
So obviously we need the free calcium for our reaction to occur.
Uh,
Our installation engineers, after the sale is complete, our installation engineers hold a call with the plant managers or the plant associated employee or personnel with our producer partners, and they work out to map essentially the batching. So obviously different producers do it different ways. Some head load aggregates, some head load cement, some head load, water, then cement, then aggregates. It's a mixture of different things. We want to make sure that we start our injection shortly after the water the water and the cement have come into contact with each other, so that free calcium is there and available to start interacting with the CO2. We also want to make sure that the CO2 injection terminates before all of the aggregates essentially in the mix. It's the aggregates what helps us fold it back into the mix itself and keep it from off gassing.
have there right? So I guess I'm kind of thinking back to your company's goals, in terms of offsetting carbon, and I guess I don't know what the ratio would be, but might in like North America, based on the total amount of concrete made, like what percentage would be ready mix versus precast? I mean, it's got to be weighted heavily in the ready mix side, I would
From a volume
assume.
perspective, it is. I think there's almost a 10 to 1 or 15 to 1 ready mix plant to precast producers. Because you can go into any small town and they'll have 17 or 18 different ready mix companies in that one town, and ready mix producers can be as small as one company or one plant, and as large as several hundred.
Yeah.
And each of those plants are producing a single ready mix plant probably produces 80 to 100,000 cubic yards a year if they're keeping busy properly. In a major metroplex, you could up that number up to 400, 500,000 per plant.
Okay.
And your big precast producers are probably producing 80 to 100,000 cubic yards of concrete a year.
So then I guess, is it fair to say that maybe the initial focus, or currently the main focus, is ready mix concrete suppliers, or is precast right there at the tip of the spear as well?
We want to be in every single concrete producer. I wouldn't say we have a focus. From our perspective, it's more important for us to reduce the amount of CO2 emissions in the environment than it is for us to focus on one producer versus another. We have had discussions with precast producers that produce as low as 600 cubic yards a year. The difference between precast producers and ready mix producers is a ready mix producer may use type 5 cement once in 15 years, which is the most expensive cement they'll come across, versus a precast producer that produces architectural cement that's spending the same amount of money for architectural cement as they are for type 5, and they're producing several thousand yards of that a year. So there are varying differences between the interests between precast producers and ready mix producers. The ready mix producers are going to come to us with a volume mindset. We want to reduce powder because we have an insane amount of volume, versus the precast producers may balance out that same approach with, well, we want to be in greener construction because it opens up a lot more opportunities for us. But we also want to reduce our cost of cements because cement prices are never going to go down. They're just going to continuously go up. Every one of us that's ever worked in the operations side of a house, can remember a year where they got 2 separate price increases letters in a single year. It's just part of the business.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about, maybe this was specific to admixture suppliers, good tight knit group, work together, collaborative. The goal is to always, drive innovation and, kind of lift the boats of everybody. The precast concrete industry, this is, maybe kind of my perspective, very tight knit organization. A lot of family owned and operated precasters, privately owned precasters. I mean, when you go to an NPCA event, people are always typically networking, trying to help each other out, just a really good supportive group, and they watch out for each other. So how has it been challenging trying to educate or get precast concrete manufacturers to be open to the idea of utilizing this technology?
I like a good challenge. It's an interesting way of looking at it. I enjoy educating. We spoke earlier about the DOT testing and the ASHA testing and whatnot. I take every single one of those opportunities as a chance to educate somebody on what our company's trying to do and what our focus is. And, with the goal that if I can convey that information and I can convey what the desire is and convey what the benefits are, both to the company itself and to their opportunities, then that individual goes back to their company or their regulatory agency and they become a champion of the product. They don't look at us as, oh, they're just trying to make, the world a happier, unicorn place. It's not that. We want to make the environment cleaner. Everything I love about construction is the longevity of it. I was telling somebody the other day, my kids tease me about it because every time I drive across a bridge or every time I drive across a building that I was involved in constructing, I point it out to my kids and say, they're like, yeah, Dad, we've heard it all before. Every time you drive by this building, you tell us that. But it's the same thing with this. If we can make concrete with a lower environmental impact, we have a responsibility to do it. We have a responsibility to do it both for our kids, for their grandkids, just to make the world a better place to live long after we're gone. And construction's the same way. We're trying to make things and make structures and make things that outlast us or, have life cycles that, carry on for generations and, help those future generations.
I guess so. With that being said, how are things going so far in getting into the precast, specific industry in North America? I mean, are there challenges? Are people wide open to it? What kind of have been any potential roadblocks that you've come across?
We have been in precast for about the last 2 years now. It's something that I've said from the beginning is very, very near and dear to me. When I first joined the company 2 years ago, my immediate request was that we, associate ourselves with, PCI and MPCA. And I was at the first annual PCI event in New Orleans where CarbonCure had a presence. And by presence, I mean, it was me handing out business cards and reintroducing myself to people that I'd been on committees with in the past and just saying, hey, that we're going through this process. And from there, it has blown up an interest level. I would say Kansas City, we got up in front, we did a product demonstration and it was well attended and well listened to. And there were people from both, obviously MPCA and PCI there, both, asking great questions and trying to understand a little bit more. And, it seems like every time we go to one of the regional or national PCI events, we get more people that are interested in learning about doing it. They're hearing more about green construction and, they're curious about how to get into it and what they need to do and those kinds of things. And it's done exactly what I thought it was going to do. It was basically a conversation started 2 years ago, and now we have several great producer partners. We're in precast plants in 12 states currently. And, that increases every, couple of weeks.
Great. That's awesome. Are you able to utilize testimonials from those producers to, kind of spread the word, without you personally having to spread the word?
Some, yes. We've had Conawago's done a webinar for us. We have a couple of different white papers and documents from some of our other producer partners. Like, I don't want to speak names, but we did hand out a couple of pamphlets of one of our partners in Texas when we were at PCI in Chicago, and it was well received. In fact, each of their individual plants were so isolated, they're like looking at it like, you guys are in our, or one of our facilities. Like, yeah, we're in 5 of them. So he was very surprised by that.
That's awesome.
Just kind of one of those things that, we operate in cellular environments and don't always necessarily see outside of our states.
Sure. Would it be fair to say, is CarbonCure the first company to do this? To come to the concrete manufacturing industry and knock on doors and say, hey, we've got something for you that not only can make, your community a better place in terms of being good to the environment, but we can also open up some revenue streams and, add more to your bottom line and things of that nature. Is that fair to say? Or
I'd say it's fair to say with our technology, yes, the CO2 injection technology. And we've been looking for greener solutions in concrete for years, whether it's pozzolans, whether it's tertiary mixes, whether it's finding different admixtures that we can use to do the same kind of performances inside of concrete, allowing us to reduce powder. The target's always been across the board. How do we reduce powder? Cement by its very nature is the most aggregate grief, I can't speak today, is the worst offender with regards to CO2 emissions. To produce 1 pound of cement, we're essentially producing 0.94 pounds of emitted CO2 into the environment. So every time we can pull a pound of cement out of any kind of mix design, it's a good thing. That's 0.94 pounds of CO2 prevented from being emitted.
How do your conversations go with folks that are in the cement industry? Like, are there challenges there? Like, are you guys seen as like, hey, I want to sell cement? I don't know. That just kind of came to my mind as you were talking about that. I'm sure, there's different folks out there doing different things with different focuses that, as you said about the one manufacturer, like, hey, our technology is in your plant 5 miles down the road. And the person's like, oh, I didn't even know that, but I mean,
We all
sometimes.
sign the we all sign the antitrust policy every time we go to an NPCA meeting or a PCI meeting, or we steer clear of talking about pricing. The cement manufacturers have their own directions that they're going, trying to reduce the actual carbon footprint of concrete. 1L cements, UL cements,
Okay.
1LHEs, different kinds of focuses for them, and building up the cementitious or the supplementary cementitious additives in the clinker. We're all trying to do the same thing, and my look at it is if we're all working together, the only way for us to get to a net zero actual carbon emitted concrete is for us to be using multiple technologies at the same time. We're one technology, 1L is another technology, admixtures are another technology. But if we all work in sync, then we can get concrete to a true zero carbon footprint material.
If we could just kind of go back. So, let's say, precast manufacturer A is like, okay, this is interesting. I've heard of CarbonCure, I'm interested in going greener. I don't, there's got a lot of stuff going on. It's end of the year, trying to get stuff in the ground before the snow flies. If someone's at a point where they're like, I like the idea of just being an environmental steward. Okay, like checkbox one. Like what are the other boxes where, okay, we can produce the same performing mix with less cement. So now we're putting more, less money's going out into the mix, more money can go back into the business in terms of cost savings. Are there other streams of revenue? I don't know, other benefits? Like, what are like the other, kind of high-end selling points if you're trying to kind of open the door and get in for that conversation with the main decision maker?
Most expensive material in a concrete mix design, obviously, so we all know, is cement. Anytime you can reduce that powder, obviously you're generating revenue. We have a really great sales team that works with our customers to help them both understand what their return on investment is, both from that perspective. And additional forms of revenue and revenue streams, obviously, is the greener construction market. The recent Dodge report that came out spoke specifically to, both the building industry is actively seeking to reduce carbon footprint of concrete construction. Both private sector firms and regulatory agencies have been specifying green concrete products in warehouse manufacturing, facility construction, data centers. I think the last time I looked, there's a little bit over 335 active green carbon offset credit or carbon embodiment projects going on in the U.S. currently. Obviously, you've also got the federal Buy Clean executive order that starting January 1st is going to require all products put into government construction products to have a Type 3 EPD, environmental product declaration form prior to use.
Have you guys been successful yet to have a project that maybe came out with a spec that said, like, must use CarbonCure? Like, is there, I don't know, are you guys going after like civil engineers and specifiers and, kind of pushing the word that way and saying, hey, when you put projects out to bid in your design specs, you want to incorporate something like this to ensure that the precast or the ready mix that's shown up on site, is in fact green? I don't know. Is that one of your focuses, as well as, work directly with the manufacturers or the producers?
It's a byproduct of our strategic business managers going out and actually having conversations and discussing, going in front of AEC and talking to engineers and specifiers. It is a byproduct of it. We have seen it to where we've had customers come back to us and say, hey, X manufacturer is requiring us to have this in our system. What do we need to do and how do we need to go about it? And, we give the same level of effort to, the customer that's coming in from a project basis we would from anybody that's coming in from a greener construction mindset, because they're our partners. We want them to continue to be our partners, and we want them to see the value and the benefit of what we bring to the table, both from that project, and then have them start to think about other, other advantages past this. Okay, so we can, implement your system, and now we're reducing powder and mix designs. Wait a minute, we're now manufacturing, at a less expensive level. We can, like you said, invest that money elsewhere. Well, okay, how do I start using this in my everyday business? How do I start looking at it at the other projects I'm looking at? What do I need to do? And it creates a great relationship. And it might not be the typical sales route that people like to come to the table and have those discussions, but we treat all of our producer partners the same. We invest the same amount of time that with every single one of them, and we enjoy working with them all because, again, our end goal is to reduce the total CO2 emissions on Earth.
Sometimes a precaster, right, like their mix might be dialed in. The flowability is where they want it. The spread is everything's perfect. Like, I don't want to touch this thing, it's perfect. Do you guys provide support to the point where, let's say manufacturer A says, okay, Ben, let's try it, I'll give this a shot, and all of a sudden, I don't know, the spread goes from X to Y, people are freaking out. Like, do you guys physically have people like boots on the ground that come in and like can assist at that level of service?
Very much so.
Okay.
So my team does that. I mean, I've
Oh,
spent many hours and weeks on job sites. Anybody that's ever worked with SCC concrete knows just a slight adjustment of aggregate or any kind of powder in one direction is going to have some interesting effects on the spread of the concrete. Same with high flow concretes. And it's also another reason that we prefer to maintain good business relationships and contacts with the admixture companies, because I don't want to be telling a manufacturer to go up or down on an admixture without having that conversation with their rep first.
yes.
And if that's a contentious relationship, then it becomes, it just doesn't work. So, my goal is always to maintain a great relationship with their admixture company so that we can have those conversations, and the three of us can sit around and say, okay, let's make a slight adjustment up here with a high range, and down here with a hydration stabilizer or whatnot, just to make sure that their properties are the same. Most SCC concretes we've worked with, we do an equal volumetric adjustment of the aggregates, and then it becomes maybe a half ounce one way or the other with regards to adjustment of the admixture after powder reduction. Okay. And so it's not big and it's not drastic, but we still we maintain those relationships, we maintain those communications, and we work with the customers and the admix reps.
Okay, how about start wrapping things up here? I've been through your website watching videos, and I'm not going to say that it specifically says this, but I think there is language on it where the amount of savings you might get from cement, things of that nature, offset the cost associated with incorporating CarbonCure into your system. I mean, this is just my opinion. I would assume that a producer, if they're like, okay, these guys provide good service, so if something bad happens, like I call Ben and he's there and we get it squared away and I'm not missing a whole day of production. And number two, if it can be shown, I guess, at the end of the month, closing books, whatever it is, that like, hey, this is actually, this is a net positive for my balance sheet. Can you kind of speak to that?
Also, cements are going to vary by market, by region, by volume. Most of our all of our customers, the sales team writes up an ROI for the customer. And so they can look at the ROI and see where their cost neutral, cost or in return positive. Usually that amount occurs somewhere around a 2 to 3% reduction in powder per mix design. But again, that's volume based. If you have a producer that's producing 10,000 cubic yards annually of a concrete at the same price another producer is producing 100,000, our contract with our customers, it's a lease. We're leasing the technology to the customer. So there's a fixed monthly price. And they've got to be able to understand they have to be able to calculate whether or not, the benefit is there for them. On average, though, it's about a 2 to 3% powder reduction. And across the board right now, we're averaging a 4.6 to 4.7% powder reduction across our producers. And you start calculating in there, the higher volume producers in there are going to be, residential markets, light construction or light commercial. We're getting bigger reductions with our precast customers, typically because the mixes are very heavily weighted in cement to make sure they hit their high early release. But more often than not, we get good reductions with all of our precast customers.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Well, it's yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to assuming things go. Let's hope things are okay. But meet you in person at Amelia Island. Again, it sounds like you're going to be there, Ben.
I am planning to as of now. And so
Okay.
is my counterpart, our technical service engineer that focuses in the precast industry. And then I believe two of our salespeople are as well. But again, that's going to, it falls back to producer demands. If I have, if you have a producer that's asking me to be somewhere, that
Sure.
takes priority over.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Well, then definitely look forward to meeting somebody from your organization there. Awesome. Well, Ben, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate your time. This is, I mean, it sounds like every week, every month, you guys are, kind of doing what you're supposed to be doing and getting more concrete out there that's utilizing your technology. So, yeah, looking forward to definitely learning more about it and meeting folks from your team, and look forward to hopefully catching some presentations or some different things that you guys are involved with at the national shows. With that being said, Ben, I want to thank you again. We will again, if there's folks that listen to this and want to get in touch with you, I'm going to say go to carboncure.com, and that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Sure.
Connect with you on LinkedIn. I would assume getting in touch with your organization is not something that's hard to do. But if folks do communicate to me directly, I can make sure to connect you guys via email, so it's a direct connection. But yeah, keep up the great work. Again, appreciate your time. All the best moving forward, and continue on with the green movement. It's not gonna end anytime soon. It's not gonna probably end ever. So I think the more and more we talk about it and show benefits, folks are getting on board. So keep up the great work, and you have a great rest of your week.
Sure. You too.
Okay, thank you much.